In the scam home warranty business, the people are represented by two separate but equally lazy groups: the authorization agents who deny claims and smoke like chimneys, and the technicians who lie through their teeth to snag a few extra bucks. These are their stories. Here are the top 10 things not to say as a plumber to scam home warranty. Number one, access. Access is a very loaded term. Access means opening something to get at something else. Typically, when regarding access, you're talking about cutting into drywall, but this can also mean concrete, other wooden enclosures, for example, that around a jacuzzi. If you had to pull out a toilet to get it a wax seal, if you had to pull up a tub to find a leak, if you have to open a wall to run some new piping or find another pipe that is leaking, access in general is not covered. Even in a situation in which access were covered, scam home warranty would reserve the right to not reimburse for fixing whatever the access had broken. So if there's a giant hole in the wall, scam home warranty would probably only cover a rough finish. If anything, a rough finish would be the absolute worst patch job by the cheapest person in town. If there's a huge hole in your drywall with all the nice paint or maybe some wallpaper, none of that would look the same after the access had been restored to a rough finish, which is the absolute most that scam home warranty would cover. Access is also a term that applies to cleanouts. If no clean out is installed and one has to be installed, or you have to open up a wall to find a clean out, then that is not covered. Sometimes clean outs are on the roof. Costs related to finding a clean out on the roof, getting up there, any roof related fees are not covered. Number two, foreign objects. So any obstruction that is due to a foreign object is going to be excluded. Foreign object is kind of poorly defined and can be just about anything. A clump of hair or a child's toy would be a foreign object. A wad of sanitary wipes would be a foreign object. Anything that was attempted to be flushed but wouldn't flush is basically a foreign object. This is not to say that foreign objects as a whole are always excluded, but rather if you cannot clear a foreign object with a mechanical snake, the same thing that a plumber would have on them at all times. The one thing about foreign objects is that you can't really tell if it'll snake or not until you actually snake it. So if a plumber calls and asks for authorization to snake and they haven't snaked yet and they go to snake and it won't clear and now it's suddenly a denied claim. Number three, stoppages due to rust or sediment buildup. So anything that cannot be cleared as a result of rust or sediment is going to be excluded. This extends to conditions of water flow restriction. So water flow restriction is kind of a weird term. So when it comes to water flow restriction, basically any pipe that's over like 10 or 20 years old is going to have a little bit of rust in there, maybe some sediment. So if the water pressure in the house is off, and there's nothing clearly obstructing it that you can push through with a snake or something. So it's kind of a cop out to say that we don't cover rust or sediment buildup, since that's going to be a cause of a lot of water issues. Number four, roots or other causes of obstruction. So roots as a whole are not covered in the slightest if they cause any kind of damage to the piping. If you even pull back a root on an internal pipe, one that isn't being run outside, and maybe a root made its way into the foundation somehow, that wouldn't be covered either. The thing is that sometimes you can clear a line that has roots in it. It's possible to rip through the roots using something like hydrojetting or steam cleaning or maybe a chemical, but it's kind of a catch-22 when it comes to roots, because you're going to have to prove that there's roots in there. In order to do that, you're either pulling back with a snake some roots, or maybe you have a camera in the line and you can see the roots. In any event, getting the camera in there isn't covered, and the second you see a root, the entire claim is excluded. So any kind of root damage to the water system, whether inside or outside of the foundation, is excluded. Number five, anything outside of the confines of the home. On the subject of foundations, anything that is beyond the foundation is excluded. This is written right into the policy, both in the plumbing section and in the first page under basis for coverage under section 1 or section A, depending on which company. When it says outside of the confines of the house, they're referring to only the foundation. So if there's any auxiliary buildings to the home, secondary houses, maybe a garage with a bedroom on top of it that's not attached to the home, or at the very least not underneath the foundation when it was first made, these would not be places where plumbing or pretty much anything else would be covered in the first place. Also, coverage when it comes to plumbing only extends to within 50 feet of the home, 50 to 100 depending on which company, but typically 50 feet is a good cutoff. Anything beyond 50 feet is going to be the responsibility of the utility that's providing the water to the home, or a sewage authority. In any event, if it's outside of the foundation, it's not covered. Number 6 is fixtures. Fixtures includes anything that isn't just the plumbing explicitly, such as a basket, a pop-up assembly, a waste or overflow, a drain line, a strainer, a faucet, a bib, a nipple, a shower enclosure, or a base pan. None of these things would be covered. They would be considered fixtures. Of course, a sink faucet and the handle is considered a fixture. It wouldn't be covered. An extendable hose or head that comes out of the sink or a shower wouldn't be covered. The shower head itself is also not covered. However, the shower stem is. So when you're thinking about a shower, just in general, the shower stem is almost the only thing covered, because even that drain line, the pop up, the little handle, the shower head itself, all of that is excluded. Number 7, toilets. Replacing a toilet by itself is almost never covered, because whatever caused the toilet to need replacing in the first place is probably an excluded failure. However, if it is going to be replaced, the home warranty company is only responsible for a builder's grade replacement. That's going to be the cheapest toilet you can find at Home Depot. It's going to cost like $80. Additionally, any fancy or expensive toilets are excluded. For example, an electronic toilet or a bidet, these would not be covered items. While most of the internal mechanical components of a toilet are covered, like the wax ring, the flapper, even the pull chain are sometimes covered. It really depends on the company, but the flange is never covered. It's important to note that nobody covers the flange. Also, going back to the earlier point, if you have to pull the toilet to fix anything, then that itself, the pulling of the toilet, is not covered. Even if you are replacing a wax ring, which is covered, having to pull the toilet to make that access wouldn't be covered. Number 8, cracks. So cracked porcelain of any kind is excluded. It doesn't matter what kind of porcelain it is. If your sink is cracked, if your shower pan is cracked, if your toilet is cracked, none of that would be covered. Also, if you have a jacuzzi that has porcelain for some reason, that wouldn't be covered. Number 9, piping. There is certain kinds of piping that is excluded right off the bat, but also failures relating to piping can be excluded elsewhere in the policy. Specifically, Quest, galvanized, and polybutylene piping are not covered. Even if it is a covered failure, but it's part of piping that isn't covered, then the claim would not be covered. If it is piping that is covered, it's possible the failure can be excluded. For example, if you have some black iron that needs to be replaced because it's rusty, that claim could be denied for rust or corrosion. Often, whatever reason it is that you are replacing the piping can be excluded, even if you're replacing the piping just because it's old. Number 10, other types of plumbing. So there are certain things that aren't covered that have to do with plumbing that aren't explicitly put in the policy, and these are septic tanks, anything outside of the home. We've already went over that. Sewage ejector pumps, which would be part of a septic system. Any system relating to well water wouldn't be covered as well, such as the pump. This is not to say that these systems are never covered. They are often offered as auxiliary coverage. For example, you could get septic coverage, you could get well water coverage, you could get a water softener coverage, but that would be more expensive than a normal policy. That would be an add-on. So thank you for joining us here once again today for our 5th video, I believe it is. Thank you for 20 subs. That is awesome. We just hit 1,300 subs on the subreddit. I want to thank D_B on Patreon for being with us from the start. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter if you haven't already. We do have an Instagram you can join. There is a Twitch channel that you can subscribe to as well. If you haven't already done so, please like, comment, subscribe, ring a little bell here on YouTube. All of those things really help us out. Hey, why don't you let us know in the comments if something is going on with your plumbing in the house? Do you have a sink that's draining slowly? Is your toilet taking too long to fill? Who knows? Maybe it's something that I know about and I can help out. It'd be nice to just talk about it if you want. In any event, thank you and have a fantastic day. And we'll see you in the next one.